The Mercedes F1 team endured an eventful race on Saturday in Bahrain, with the team experiencing a multitude of problems across both their W15 cars. Some of those were unforeseen issues such as Lewis Hamilton's seat braking during the race, while other problems encountered were totally of their own making. One such problem led to the team finishing over 45 seconds behind that of Red Bull and Max Verstappen by the end of the race, and this also led to a knock-on effect of consequences that both drivers had to deal with throughout the race as a result. And of course, this massively masked the true pace of the W15 as a result. So for all the Merc fans out there, don't take the result of this race as where the Mercedes team are in terms of the pecking order or race pace. But of course, there is a little glimmer of light that surrounds this particular outcome, and it comes from the fact that their biggest mistake over the entire weekend was one that could have been avoided had they not changed one small but significant piece of bodywork on both of the W15s driven by Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. And to make sense of their decision, we have to briefly go back to the start of the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend during FP1. Initially, the team began the Bahrain weekend with a different specification of cooling on both the cars than they eventually ran with on race day. Initially, for both practice sessions on the opening day in Bahrain, they ran both their cars with the engine cover that had the cooling loops on either side of it. This of course comes with a hindrance to the overall lap times you could possibly achieve, but of course this is no ordinary weekend or country that the F1 paddock were at for this opening race. It's one of the most hottest on the calendar. So quite clearly all the teams have to open up their cars to allow for extra cooling due to the temperatures that would be seen throughout the event. And Mercedes are no exception. So why then, when it came to qualifying and the race, did the team decide to change this vitally important area on the car going into these sessions, knowing quite clearly this could easily cause problems during the race when the cars are ran for a much prolonged period of time than at any point in the weekend? Well, there are a number of reasons I could think of that they would have come to themselves. One of those being that this season, it's the earliest in the year that they've ever been to Bahrain, and as such they experienced much cooler temps than that at any other Bahrain Grand Prix weekend in the 20 years it's been going there. This could quite easily have led the team to the conclusion that for this race, they wouldn't need as much cooling to keep the car in the correct operating window in terms of its temperature, and so close the cooling loops on the engine cover come the race. But this backfired on the team come the race, notably as early as lap 4 with George Russell, who after such an impressive start, having made his way up to second behind Max Verstappen, he began to encounter problems with his W15 power unit. And from lap 5 onwards, he had to switch focus to nursing this power unit issue caused by the cooling miscalculation, which required lifting and coasting measures to combat rising temperatures. This is the knock-on effect and the consequence I talked about at the beginning of the video. And as we can see from the graph on the screen right now, this is a lap-by-lap breakdown of George Russell's race, and it's really interesting to note what happens throughout it. As you can see, for the first 3 laps, Russell is running quite comfortably in the mid 1 minute 36 range, and then all of a sudden, from lap 4 onwards, he has a drastic rise in lap time, where he drops like a second a lap from where he was previously, and then from lap 5 it's a 1 minute 37.7, which is a dramatic loss in time. And there's only a few reasons and explanations as to why that would occur. One, it would be like an engine related issue other than the one they actually did suffer, where like the MGU-K, turns itself off, and we've seen that happen at times throughout the last 10 plus years that we've had the hybrids, or say they run out of fuel or they have to do lift and coast. And as we all know, it was a mixture of lift and coast and of course the temperatures overheating the engine. And this is what you can see throughout this graph. This is the only explanation as to why you'd have a sudden loss in lap time. Nothing else would explain it, because after 4 laps with a set of tyres, you're not going to see such a dramatic loss in lap time just through sheer tyre degradation. No car has anything anywhere near that severe, and it certainly wouldn't be Mercedes, who've had very good tyre deg over their last 10 plus years, no matter what the car is. And this loss in lap time was something both Toto and Russell spoke about after the race had finished. From then on, if you switch 3 to 4 tenths of power unit performance off, then you have to lift on coast on top. So I think at times probably altogether it was 5 or 6 tenths of a second that we couldn't take from what the car had in it. Therefore it just wasn't great fun. At times we were literally not a few degrees, but like 10 degrees running over what we thought we should be. And George Russell kind of made a comment on that very point as well, where he went in a little bit more depth with regards to the cooling specifications by saying each team has 5 or 6 cooling specifications. We chose the most aggressive, but we made a mistake. So I feel Russell was a little bit more open with what was going on in terms of the cooling specification, and it actually makes a lot more sense. So I suppose the next question is, if Mercedes didn't encounter these self-made troubles in the race, just where exactly would the likes of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton finished if they had been able to extract as much possible performance as they could have? Well, let's take a look at that. If over the course of a 57 lap race and you're losing, say, roughly a second every 2 laps in that race, that means by the end of the race, you've lost basically 30 seconds in terms of time to the leaders with regards to Verstappen and Sainz. And if we actually look at the finishing times and take into consideration that fact, that would have placed Russell within 17 seconds of Verstappen, and this would have given him second place in the race overall. So I think there's a lot of scope left for the Mercedes team to extract in terms of pure performance from their car. Quite obviously, if they hadn't made the mistake of not using the right amount of cooling for their car during the race. Of course, these are all guesstimates, and this is based off of Toto Wolff and his comments regarding that. But I've gone with the lower end of the ballpark in terms of losses that he specified. So it doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it could, potentially have been suggesting here. Alright guys, thank you all for watching the video. If you've enjoyed it, leave a comment down below, and I'll catch you all in another Formula 1 video.